Hello, and welcome to another episode of Myths and Stories, a Destiny 2 lore podcast. We are continuing our current, not really reimagining, but going back to Eris. um,
Updated Eris?
Revisiting, that's the word I was looking for.
There you go.
Uh, so our previous episode, we were with Eris kind of during Shadowkeep up until the events at the end of Shadowkeep. We had previously gone over Eris with a part one and part two, leading essentially up to her days with the Great Hunt and the Hellmouth and all of that, leading up to Shadowkeep. And because she's such a relevant figure and is tied so closely to the Hive in so many ways, and our previous series was focused on the Hive, specifically Savathun, but also kind of how she intermingled with Shivu Arath and Eris as well. We figured that we're just going to stick on the Eris Mourn train for a little bit and kind of bring our series for her up to the modern day as much as we can and just give a very holistic view of Eris Morn, or at least as much as we can that we haven't already done elsewhere.
Yeah, kind of like just again, kind of going on that theme of like important people to look at or to look out for leading up to Final Shape.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I definitely think like obviously Savathun, huge player in that game. Like I said, Destiny Universe runs off of Kara wishes and Savathun fuckery. Um,
Yeah.
and to go along with the Hive, like Eris. Eris is very much the central, I think, linchpin to a lot of things of Destiny. I mean, she was the whole reason we went into Crota back in D1. She was the whole reason we knew Oryx was coming. We chased down Oryx. We went after him. She helped the Queen kind of enact her plan. I think Eris knows more of the Queen's plan. Like again, we still don't fully know every moving part of the Queen's plan since it was enacted back in Taken King. But I think Eris knows more of the plan than any other person. Um, and so Eris being a very major player, Shadowkeep, even in Beyond Light, through the Witch Queen, like she's always been there. She's always going to be there as the you know, hey, darkness is happening. What do we do, Eris? And she just kind of comes over and goes, well, we do the thing and we kick some ass. And so yeah,
Yeah. So we are going to be picking up with the lore book, The Singular Exegete. And this is another one that is entirely written by Eris, and this took place during season of Arrivals, and this was during that season. We were the pyramid ships showed up at the various planets and were attempting to transmit a message to us via the Tree of Silver Wings, and Eris was the one that was uh, accepting and like decoding that message week over week. And there was interference with that transfer of the message by Savathun via her kind of henchman at that time, Nokris, to the point where we would try and establish that connection, and the weekly missions were like you were getting dragged into the ascendant plane and they were trying to prevent us from receiving that message, eventually culminating in a fight against Nokris at the end of the season. But with each successful message transmission, Eris wrote another page for this lore book. And she commented not only on the message received, but then also something of her interpretations of it, what was going on with her personally at this time, um, and just some general musings from her about the other characters in the world and how she thought the events taking place were potentially related to everybody. I am going to preface, even though this one is again entirely written by Eris, I am not going to be attempting Eris, my butchered version of Eris's voice, because I attempted that for our last episode, and my throat was dead for days afterwards. And I am not doing that to myself again. Um, so this is going to be normal reading, but without further ado, we're going to start with chapter 1, which is titled "Protected," and it's implied that the title of each chapter is the piece of the message Eris got that week. So she's going to reference those titles in her writings. But so it's titled "Protected," and it goes like this. Reported by the VanNet encrypted router, the following message states: Reference obvious. The enemy insinuates that we are hobbled by the traveler's protection, denied our full potential. This is expected. Our foe comprehends only violence and its beauty. End of official message. The rest is personal notes scratched in hive leather with a flake of Ionian stone. The season took place on Io. And it reads: The tired insinuation that protection is weakness. I expected more from our great foe. When we hunted the first trespasser on the moon, I discovered the journal of a Golden Age commander. Kang Swan had faith and training. Still, the darkness seduced her. And this is the insidious power that turned her against her god. In other news, I am learning to cook. I salvaged a hot plate back on the moon. It was vacuum welded to the countertop, and I had to cut it free. My hands ache, but they are steadier. Cousin Asher, you would find the concept of vacuum welding upsetting. Pressing two sheets of metal together in the void, and their atoms cannot tell which sheet they belong to, and they cross freely. The two become one. I sleep beside an intruding pyramid. I am deep in its shadow. Back in the tower, beneath the traveler, could they understand how I am vacuum welded to the enemy? Ikora would understand. She studied the Taken with me, despite the risks. And Zavala values foresight. But he also fears the next Lysander, the next Toland, the next Reziel Azir. He fears what I could teach his guardians. He is wary of being the one to say no when all his guardians shout yes. But it is his duty, and he does love when duty hurts. There are now forceful angled cuts being used to inscribe this next bit. And it says, I am afraid. I am afraid that if I go on, I will lose everything I have regained. All my peace, all my trusts, all my hopes. And I will even destroy my dear friend who fights where I cannot. There's a large blank space in the writing before it continues. I need to make a walk. I'm going to take an angle grinder to the rotor disc from an old rover. I must find cooking oil to season it. I will search through Cousin's old caches tomorrow. Tonight, I cook fried rice. Rice and raisins will come from my stores. The recipe calls for pineapple. Is this a joke? A pine-flavored apple. I will substitute breadfruit, if I can find it. That's the end of this first message slash diary, essentially.
I do like that. This is insinuating that pineapples don't exist in the future. I do love that. No, so I the the beginning part of this where it's so the title is being protected.
Mm-hmm.
It's the whole idea that or the just the fact that it's just a single word, right? By itself doesn't really give any type of direction or anything like that. So for Eris to just be left on this end to kind of interpret it as this is what it is, it can mean a great many things. And she kind of goes through that through a lot of this stuff, talking about how it's are we is the enemy insinuating that we're hobbled because of the traveler's protection? So like, is the enemy calling us the protected, and so like we're foolish, we are foolish to believe that? Like, is that what the deal is? Because the foe that is sending this message only comprehends violence in all of its beauty, or is it like, are we protected from the darkness? Like, there she talks about this golden age commander that she had training, she had faith, she was protected, yet the darkness still seduced her. She still succumbed to it. And then she talks about how Ikora understand, like there's this whole idea about the vacuum welding, and she uses it as an analogy for herself,
Mm-hmm.
um, for Ikora being vacuum welded to the enemy, because she very much is, and especially with the hive. I mean, look at her eyes. Like there's
Right.
like she is part hive. Like for all intents and purposes, she really is vacuum welded to the hive. Um, and she talks about how Ikora would understand that, um, and like Zavala, on again at this time, at the time of this reading, you got to think when this was. This was season of Rivals, so this was before. This was right before
Beyond
um,
Light.
Beyond Light. That's right. And with Beyond Light came missing planets and shit. So darkness was like, pyramid ships were here, planets were getting taken. Um, Zavala at that time was, I think, very scared, because this was before Season of the Haunted, and I think Season of the Haunted kind of opened Zavala's eyes, um, as well as Witch Queen itself. Like the idea that like we had her worm, like we had Savathun, and the light chose her. Like fuck that. There's no way. Like Zavala was losing what little hair was left on him over that. But Zavala does value foresight. I do like that idea. Like, if the more Zavala can see and the more he can gather, the better his commander, his role as a commander plays out. Like he can make better decisions as a commander,
Mm-hmm.
and all of these people he fears: Lysander, Tolan, Raziel Azir, which if you remember from our Dredgen series, that's Dredgen Yor. Like all these things that gave in to the darkness, where all the guardians, he's like no, and all the guardians are like yeah, and it's like, well, maybe take a step back and think about it for a second.
Mm-hmm.
But the one guardian that has, and again, we say guardian because it, like, we don't have any other term for it, is Eris. She is the one guardian that rides the line and doesn't, she's vacuum welded to it, and she doesn't fall to it. She doesn't. But I think it's because she's vacuum welded to it that she doesn't fall to it. She sees herself. She and the hive, I think, see each other as the same thing,
Yeah.
but she has enough of her own will and her own ideas and her own thoughts that she can say, no, I am kind of the hive, but I'm not. I am, maybe I'm protected because of that. And then of course the little I just I love the idea of thinking of her as a cook now, like making a wok, and then again the insinuation that pineapples don't exist in the future just
Yeah,
kind
that's a
of
fun
messes with
one.
my mind. But then
uh,
like where the forceful angled cuts of where she's describing this, that's all written as like a one long run on sentences. It's almost like she's afraid right there. Like she is
yes.
like I think and I mean, it says, "I am afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid." Like, I think she really is a little scared here. Like, because she is vacuum welded to the enemy, is she more hive than she is guardian? And I mean, that's obviously that's a question she's been asking herself all the way up until season of the witch, where she finally like accepted it. She's like, okay, like by the time she gets to season of the witch, she's like, yes, I am part hive, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to
Yep.
use that to my advantage. That's going to be a tool in my tool belt. That's not going to be a hindrance. It's not going to be a, oh, look at the scary hive lady over there with her darkness and stuff. No, I'm going to use this. I'm going to be powerful with it, and I'm going to help fight for humanity with it.
Yeah. And she's still very much struggling at this time with with the idea of like, is because she has presumably at least kind of touch stasis at this point. May not have control over it necessarily, but the end of Shadowkeep, we saw her briefly wield it.
Yeah.
Um, and so she's got that in her at this point, whether or not she's actively used it or really learned how to wield it, effectively is up for debate. But um, so she's having this like this dichotomy of not only is she vacuum molded to the hive, but also kind of by extension of that, the dark, their enemy. Um, and she's having like again those kind of very forceful, scared bitch. She says like, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that if I continue down this path, I will lose everything.
Yep.
Um, Another interesting point, that maybe is just me reading into it a little too much, but she does specifically call Asher cousin. Cousin Asher. You would find the concept of vacuum molding upsetting. I wonder if that's an implication if she is using cousin in the same way that like Petra does.
That's what I was
And
thinking. Petra and all the Corsairs, when you're walking around the Dreaming City, is like
yeah,
if you're an Awoken, they call you cousin.
so maybe Eris
think she
is an
is.
Awoken.
I think she is.
It would make
I think
sense.
I think if anything confirms it, it's that one like cousin Asher, like because Asher is an Awoken. He calls himself a Jensen scribe, but he is a guardian, and I think he is a self-appointed Jensen scribe,
I think so
or
too.
he could have been a Jensen scribe when he was an Awoken, and then, or sorry, I can't say when he was. He is still an Awoken. Well, I guess now he's just code. Um,
Yeah.
when he was an Awoken pre-Guardian, an Awoken of the Reef, uh, and then obviously died at some point, was rezzed as a Guardian, and then took on the role of Jensen Scribe, because the Jensen Scribes were only they were only of the Awoken of the Reef that were not Guardians,
Yeah.
that had come back through the Distributary and all that stuff. So the fact that he was a Guardian and a Jensen Scribe is very like, again, I think he took that mantle on himself, or he was that and then like looked into it and was like, oh no, I am a scientist at heart, therefore I will continue the mantle of Jensen Scribe.
Yeah.
But the cousin portion, I think, is absolutely Eris was Awoken. Like I don't think she was. It's weird to say she wasn't human, because Awoken are human.
Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, we had suspected that she had been an Awoken for a while now,
which
because
is why she keeps calling
Mara, my
Mara her queen.
queen. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So just a little further confirmation, though, that seems the most likely case. But so we follow along to the second chapter, which the title of this is equally as important as the last, and this one is just titled Eggshell. And so it starts with the encrypted message from Eris back to the Vanguard, which says, "The bird cannot fly until it leaves the eggshell. The enemy continues to suggest that we must abandon the traveler. This is a good sign. It would not need to entice us if it could destroy us without effort." And then after that is her personal notes, scored in hive leather with a knife. And they say, "Tidal volcanism and Jupiter's plasma breath made Io into a treasure trove of chemistry for the traveler's work. A good walk must be seasoned in the same way. I am heating it with sunflower oil from Cousin Asher's cache. There were many fine things, all untouched. He denies himself. I ache from the hike. Ikora says I am full of hairline fractures and deep muscle trauma. I never noticed until all the other pains had healed. The illusions of recovery. One pain obscures another. There is danger in this traffic with the pyramid. Kang Xuan's logs make that plain. But I must continue. I must continue. What worth have I ever been, except that I know the enemy? More worth, Mara would remind me. I am more than my uses. So, what bird would we become if we left the traveler behind? There are obvious examples. We might survive as raiders on the edge. We might abandon our humanity for machines. We might rise up in war and build an empire. Yet none of these can be the answer. Fallen, Vex, Cabal, and Hive all covet the traveler. They have not left it behind. If all things beyond the traveler's protection fall under the suzerainty of darkness, not because they serve it, but because they are obedient to its law, then to leave the traveler would be to join the enemy. There would be no other way. Even so, I am proof otherwise. I move between. There is not only gray between black and white. All the colors are there. And am I not necessary? I would be lost without those who led me back to the light. If I had not been there to guide them down into the darkness, they would all be dead. Who would we become if we were all like Eris Mourn? Ah, my walk is on fire. And it very abruptly ends there.
I just love that. This idea of Eris learning to cook. She's like, ah, shit, my walk's on fire. Burp. So yeah, obviously the I really like the beginning of this, that idea of like the message: the bird cannot fly until it leaves the eggshell. The enemy continues to suggest that we must abandon the traveler. Like, that's a good sign, because if it could just beat us outright, then it would just come and beat us. The fact that because you got to remember, these messages are coming from the darkness, and like Eris is interpreting these for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the enemy to just say, "Hey, you need to leave that thing." Well, okay, if that were true, then by logic of the sword, or logic of darkness, then if I'm not of that, then I have to be of the darkness. So the fact that the darkness is telling me to abandon it means that it's afraid of it, and it can't just beat us outright. And then she does go through like the different examples, right? Like, we might be raiders on the edge. We might abandon our humanity for the machines. We might rise up and build the empire. That's Fallen, Vex, and Cabal. All of these things want the traveler. Like, there's like, each one wants it for their own thing. The Fallen, they want to chase their great machine back. They want their golden age back. The Vex want to understand it. The Cabal want to conquer it. Even the Hive want to destroy it. So like, none of them have abandoned the traveler, and for darkness to call us out and be like, no, you abandon it. Well, then obviously we shouldn't. Like that's just like the kind of like clear like that to me is like the clearest message here of like if the enemy tells you to drop your sword and walk away from it, well, no, that means the sword is the most important thing to me and I need to hold on to it as tight as possible.
Yeah, it is an interesting perspective to be like, if you're all chasing this, if you're all, even if you're chasing it to try and retake it or try and destroy it or like do whatever you want to do, if your end goal is still the traveler, then the traveler is still in control of you to some degree.
Right.
Uh, and yeah, she's, to truly not, to truly like not be beholden to the traveler anymore means you need to just not care it exists.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh which is interesting because honestly, even knowing what we know now about the witness, that's not like the witness cares about the traveler. The witness has been
Yep.
seeking it. So even it has not left the traveler behind necessarily.
Everything that has interacted with the traveler in some sort of way, the traveler has touched it and now like everything is enthralled with it. Anything that the traveler's come across has now been completely enthralled with the traveler itself.
Yeah.
So like in that sense, it really is controlled by it.
Yeah. This is it's an interesting thought. Uh and that Eris does a very good job of like taking a different perspective on a situation. Um which I guess is kind of her whole vibe is, she's been through enough that she thinks about things in ways that other people don't necessarily.
Right.
And it was kind of I don't know if heartwarming is the right word, but like to she has apparently told herself so many times that, I am only worth the knowledge that I have. Um, and Mara has gone so far as to reassure her and remind her, like, you're worth more than just what other people can use you for.
Yep.
Which is an interesting line coming from Mara, of all people.
Who is used literally everyone, including her own brother.
Yes.
Yeah.
But maybe she had learned a little bit at this point.
One would hope.
But no. So that takes us to the next chapter and the next message. I This one, the title and message is just the word white. And Eris's report to the Vanguard on it states, the color white exists as a symbol of uniformity, sterility, and sameness. In light there is only death. The same message VIP 2014 received in the lunar pyramid. Again, uninteresting. And then her personal notes, again scored with a knife, say, I do not believe that darkness has returned to destroy the traveler. Surely it could have done that while the traveler was maimed and stranded. Why wait for a sign that the light had returned to its strength? Perhaps the darkness has returned for us. Guardians are the traveler's final memorial. We are its selfless legacy and last argument. The color white, stasis, blankness, bone, a flag of truce. This is an opportunity. We must do as we did before, encounter the enemy's power, learn what we can, and report back. And if we return with nothing but beautiful and violent words, then we will study them as scripture and find some way to turn the enemy's power to our use, just as it wishes to turn us to its purpose. My walk is filthy with burnt oil. I need baking soda to clean it, but there is no Trona on Io. Instead, I bubbled carbon dioxide through sodium hydroxide burnt like hive blood, and retrieved enough soda to clean the walk. While I was scrubbing, a young guardian approached. She had an ancient name, Akkadian, perhaps, or Sumerian. She said that she had heard of me, and she wanted to help me search for knowledge. I snapped at her to bring me a pineapple. I know I was cruel. And that's the end of this chapter.
Poor kid. Oh, I've heard of you. You're Eris Mourn. What can I do to help? Find a goddamn pineapple. I've never heard of these things. I don't know what the fuck they are. Go find that shit. Oh, now I'm sad because I sent away my only friend. Damn it, Eris.
Although, being in Eris's shoes here, like, a random guardian finds you and is like, hey, I want to help you learn more, like, discover more knowledge. Like, I have to think Eris is going to sit there and be like, that's what you want to go with? You sure you're not a very obvious spy for something? Like,
fine, spy. Go find me a pineapple. I love the way she says pineapple. It's
yeah.
a hyphenated word for her. Go find me a pineapple. Not a pineapple, a pineapple. I like it. Oh man. But okay, so white, right? Like it can mean a billion different things, right? Like
Yep.
she even says here it's a symbol of uniformity, sterility, sameness. It could be a flag of truce, blankness, bone. Like that, white is again all these messages as a one-word message could mean anything. But again, if we kind of like equate it to like what she's equating it to, the light, white being white light, and then thinking back to the idea of what she was saying, you know, in light there is only death. That's the message that was delivered to us. The old VIP 2014, the player guardian, in the lunar period. So again, the darkness is still trying to pull us away from it. She brings up an interesting question here too. I do not believe the darkness has returned to destroy the traveler, and we know that now. Obviously, like the witness just went inside of it. Surely it could have done that while the traveler was maimed and stranded, meaning back in the Golden Age, back at the Great Collapse. Why did it wait for a sign that light had returned to its former strength? Because that's the only reason why the pyramid ships even woke up, was because that big blast that came off when Gaul was defeated at the end of the Red War. So that is an interesting question. Like we know now it's because the witness had lost his plaything, that being the veil, during the collapse, and needed to come back and find it, and for light to be in the universe again as a I'd say formidable power, because I think up until that point, like light existed in the universe, but very faintly in the solar system, and then when that explosion went off, now light had touched all of the universe, and it was like, okay, light, you know, light's back in play type of thinking, type logic from the darkness side. So again, it's the idea of like why would the darkness just like the darkness was here, it was in the solar system, it caused the collapse, the traveler is right there, like why did it not destroy it right then and there? Did the traveler do something? Was it all Savathun's tomfoolery that caused them to go away? Like what, you know, we still don't have a full picture of what went on there. But then, you know, why would it wait for light to return to come back? And then her idea of like using this whole thing as an opportunity, like, you know, figure out what the enemy's power is, learn what we can, report back. If we find out that like we're screwed, cool, we're screwed. Let's study it and see if there's some way we can use its power against itself. So yeah, it's interesting. Again, the big interesting thing is that one question: the why wait for a sign that the light had returned to its strength, for the darkness to come back and be like, okay, now I'll deal with it. Other than because video game.
Well, I guess knowing what we know now, perhaps the traveler being awake is a requirement for it to be used as a portal to the Pale Heart.
Sure.
Um,
With it being like, oh, I see what you're saying. So like because of the collapse, when it went dormant, like now the veil did nothing.
right. Well, not that
That's an interesting
the witness
thought.
didn't have the veil anyway at that
Right,
time,
right, right. Because everything had been
but
stolen away and all that stuff.
even if it did, or maybe this could also be a case where Savathun thought she was more clever than she was, and the witness
Yeah,
knew exactly where it was or had a rough idea of what had happened to it, but with the traveler dormant, it didn't matter because it wouldn't do
it
anything.
wouldn't actually activate or do anything. Yeah,
So it had to wait anyway for the traveler to wake up or have enough power to, reactivate, and then it could be used.
I do like that idea.
That feels a little better from the player side of things than like the
Because
witness
video game.
lost the veil and then just fucked off because reasons.
Yeah.
Like,
like that's like the big thing too, is like it's just like when somebody loses their contact. Like you don't lose your contact in the bathroom and go, well, I guess I'll go outside and go to Mars and see if I can find my contact.
yeah,
You don't travel to another system to find the thing that you lost in the system that you lost it in. So yeah, it's that's always been the weird thing for Savathun. And again, it could like that could just be Savathun fucking with us.
it
Like
could
we
be.
don't know if she's even telling the truth of like she's the reason why the collapse wasn't successful, and I put that in quotation marks. Like we didn't completely die. Like maybe I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. But regardless, uh, Eris is so far very unimpressed with the messages she's been getting.
Basically being shown like all these messages come back to like the darkness trying to tell us to leave the light, and she's
Right.
just like, okay, that's stupid, I'm not doing that.
Well, and I do think it's interesting that she kind of comes to the conclusion of where we ended up, which is we need to encounter the enemy's power, and then if it's something, if it's beautiful and violent, if it's something that we can use to enact violence against the enemy, we need to turn it against them. Which is essentially
That
what we've
being
done.
stasis and strand and any darkness power.
Anything that's dark, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And this is still a time in the game's life where the characters as well as most of the players associated like dark with coming from whatever. At this time we didn't know about the witness, so it was like darkness is a force that's being provided by or is the source of it is the big bad. It wasn't understood as just a cosmic force yet.
Well, and like what you're saying there, like it being interpreted from the big bad, therefore it is bad.
Right. Yeah.
Like we're still at this point in time, we're still under that idea and that premise of like light good, dark bad. Anything of dark is bad. Don't
Yeah.
touch that. Anything of light is good. Play with this. Like use this. So yeah, this is definitely that idea of like using the enemy's power against them. That being now that being stasis and strand, but at the time we really didn't have a clue what that was.
Yeah. And it's interesting to I like the line from Eris. It's like there's not just gray between black and
Yeah.
white. It's all the colors lie between pure white and pure black. All of the possibilities of the world lie between pure light and pure dark. Uh, and it again, it's another just very philosophical way of looking at it. But it's Eris essentially saying like we we don't have to just choose one or the other. There's
Yep.
so much more going on in between these two extremes. Uh, and I feel like that's where everyone has eventually ended up, but it's just cool to see Eris kind of get there so much before a lot of the other people.
I think that's because of her weldedness to the hive, that
Yes.
she's gotten to that point a lot quicker.
Yeah. Um, so we continue. This brings us to the next chapter and the next message, which is cusp. Just the word cusp. And Eris's report to the Vanguard is this: this is a threat. The enemy implies that we are on the edge of a second collapse. There are imitations of a repeated mistake, an error we will make again. Perhaps it is a demand for surrender. And then her personal notes follow, saying, the collapse was a murder, a genocide. Why does the enemy imply it was our error? I was born long after the Golden Age, but I do feel loyalty to that time and compassion. Humanity thought it was immortal. So did I, once. What should we have learned from the collapse? One, that we are weak. Obvious and false. No. Two, that we made errors in our defense. Our enemy is not a strategy instructor. So no. Three, that everything grown must die. Hope is futile, etc. This is tiresome. Death may be inevitable, but life is worth fighting for to protect and extend. So no, this is not the lesson either. What the traveler is using, that the traveler is using us for its own ends, then why would it be sacrificing itself? No. And lastly, that the darkness is not our enemy. It is only the traveler's enemy. Does the enemy suggest that we should have turned on the traveler during the collapse, cracked it like an egg? I see shades of the prisoner's dilemma that occupied Guangxian. If traveler and humanity cooperate, both suffer. If humanity maims the traveler as it tries to flee, both are destroyed. But if the traveler chooses to help us and we turn against it, offer it to the enemy suggests this would have been our salvation. For now, I subsist on thick pemmican and vitamin paste. I crave fresh food. I must invite someone to share this meal I will someday cook. My palate is toughened. I will need a taster. Perhaps I should not have sent the Sumerian woman away. And that's the end of that chapter.
So I'm curious. Have you looked up the prisoner's dilemma? Like
I
what
am,
that actually is?
yeah, so I'll bring it up just so I have the exact phrasing, but it's something I've encountered before.
I
It's,
feel like I've seen it before.
yeah, so it is a, psychological, sociological, uh, kind of thought experiment. Um, so Prisoner's Dilemma, I've heard it explained in multiple ways, but the general gist is that you have two prisoners. In the example that I happen to bring up, it's two members of a criminal gang are arrested and imprisoned. Each prisoner is in solitary confinement with no means of speaking to or exchanging messages with the other. The police admit that they don't have enough evidence to convict both of them on the principal charge, so they plan to sentence both to a year in prison on a lesser charge. Simultaneously, the police offer each prisoner a bargain. If that prisoner testifies against their partner, they will go free, while the partner will get 3 years in prison. But there's a catch. If both prisoners testify against each other, they will both get 2 years in jail. The prisoners are given a little time to think this over, but in no case may either learn what the other has decided until they have made their decision. Each is informed that the other prisoner is being offered the same deal. Each prisoner is concerned only with their own welfare. So, the prisoner's dilemma here.
I guess in this example, the two prisoners are the traveler and the witness. Or I guess in
The
this,
traveler and
since we don't know if the
humanity.
witness. Yeah. Oh shit.
Because the what we're facing is destruction of humanity, destruction of the traveler. Is like the both want to, assuming both want to save themselves.
Right.
Um so if we look at, if we take this as the prisoner's dilemma, if the traveler does nothing and humanity does nothing, then both are destroyed.
Right.
If the traveler abandons humanity, like it did with the Elixni, humanity is destroyed. If humanity abandons, if humanity like prevents the traveler from leaving, betrays it, then the traveler is destroyed. Maybe humanity survives. But if the traveler sacrifices itself for humanity, if it takes on the longer prison sentence to let the other prisoner go free, essentially, that's the only real potential for positive outcome that humanity gets.
I was going to say specifically for humanity, that's the only positive.
Right.
Like
And
in all other circumstances, humanity loses, humanity dies out. Like,
yeah,
but then the idea that like, see, I was thinking of this as like the traveler and the darkness, but to think of it as the traveler humanity as being the two prisoners, I mean, wow, dude, that's oh man, that's that's fucking deep. Because again, thinking like if we're the prisoners, like that means we're both being held hostage by the darkness,
right. Yeah.
and that the darkness is the one that's like, hey, you give me the traveler and you can go free, but then the traveler's like, no, if I give myself up, then you can be free and without the help of the darkness, and now you can fight the darkness. Like now you're not beholden to the darkness. Dude, this is holy shit. This is a deep thought experiment. I like this one.
Yeah, so it's not exactly the prisoner's dilemma, but it's a variation of it.
It's pretty close.
Yeah,
It's pretty
because
close.
the prisoner's dilemma, it assumes that both prisoners have no goodwill towards each other,
Sure.
where the solution, quote unquote, that the traveler decides on, that our, the Destiny universe ends up seeing happen, is that the traveler doesn't act for itself. It acts in protection of the other, prisoner, quote
Yeah, the
unquote.
prisoner. Yeah. Holy
Um,
shit.
which is like,
Again, it's like
is
against the
not
rules,
accounted
right? Like
for.
that's
Yeah.
that's like the unknown. Like you can't do that. This like that's not part of the situation. But then the traveler's like, well, I'm paracausal. I'm going to create my own fate. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. Like I'm not beholden to your rules anyway. So I guess that's kind of like in line with what the traveler would do.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's good. That's good.
So it's an interesting thought experiment on its own, let alone to try and apply it to the situation is kind of cool.
Right.
Um,
But again, there's kind of back to the card itself. Cusp talking about like the enemy is straight up saying like if you don't follow through with the first three words that I sent you, like you're on your collapse is coming.
yeah,
We're gonna end you. So for that to be a threat now like to combine all four of those together, protection, eggshell, white, cusp. Now it's like, oh, So now you're actively threatening me uh, if I don't follow through with what you're telling me to do in the first three. Well, then clearly you are my enemy. Like clearly there is something important here that I need to stay with. And then like to bring up that question of like what should we have learned from the collapse? Like because the collapse happened, and anything in life like when it happens, you can either let it control you or you can learn from it. And so for her to say, well, what should we have learned? And then to go through these different things that we're weak. No, that's not, that we made errors. No, that everything that grows must die and hope is futile, etc. No, 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 no. Travelers using us for its own ends. Maybe, but like, then why would it sacrifice itself to make the ghosts and stuff?
Right.
That the darkness is not our enemy, it is only the traveler's enemy, and that's the one statement that she kind of like falls back to and doesn't give a yes or no answer to, and it's an interesting idea there too. Again, coming back to the prisoner's dilemma of you know if the darkness isn't, and I think she's hit the nail more on the head than she realizes here. The darkness doesn't care about us.
Right.
It doesn't care about humanity. It doesn't care about the cabal. It doesn't care about the Vex, the Hive. None of it. All it cares about is that big white glowing ball floating over the city. And so if whatever's in its way around it is all just like collateral damage. It doesn't care what happens to it.
Mm-hmm.
It is only concerned with the traveler. So that idea of like if the traveler and us are the prisoners and the traveler says, "Well, I'm going to sacrifice myself to give the other prisoner more time or more freedom to discover this on their own." That's man, that's kind of like a that makes my brain hurt, dude.
But no, I think you're right. She landed on the statement that is true. Like
That's what we should have learned from the collapse: is that the darkness is not our enemy, not humanity's enemy. It is just the traveler's enemy, and everything else around it is collateral damage.
because I mean, from the witness's point of view, like ends justify the means,
Yeah.
or means justify the ends, I should say. Like
Well, we're like a non-issue. Like it shows
right,
that in Lightfall when like we're like attack that big train smoke looking thing over there in the light beam, and he just like looks over it, flicks a wrist, and like three guardians and their ships all just disintegrate into nothing.
yeah.
Like, yeah,
So the next one is interesting, coming off of that message of cusp and like kind of doom and gloom, like you're this close to another collapse. And the next message and the next title is gift. And Eris sends a report to the Vanguard saying, something new has blossomed in the cradle. Actually, she doesn't have a Vanguard report for this. It's just her personal notes. Um, so I guess she maybe didn't tell the Vanguard about this message at all, which is interesting. But so her
I was gonna
personal
say
notes,
that might be a little awkward.
yeah, her personal notes say, something new has blossomed in the cradle, a gift to reward my attention. It terrifies me, and the more afraid I am, the more I want to accept it. I came to learn from what I fear most. The more I am afraid, the more there is to learn. The shoot is a single silver branch with leaves like down. I think they are tiny feathers. Is it some thorn of Savathun's sent to bring disaster? No, I know it's not. That would be too simple. It is from the Black Pyramid. It was meant for me. I will let it grow and see if it bears fruit. It is true that I am watched by many guardians, and doubted and mocked. But this is the price of connectedness. This is proof, no matter how bitter, that I am part of something larger. Others look to me for guidance, so I choose to be worthy of that trust. I choose to tell Zavala what I have found. I will even invite him to see it. And that's the end of that. So I remember now where this entry took place during arrivals.
Oh yeah.
And the reason why there isn't a Vanguard note attached to it. This, I am pretty sure, is when the branch of the Tree of Silver Wings showed up. And Eris, there was a little cut scene, well, scene where you could walk around and whatnot, where Zavala transmats in to the area Eris
Yeah.
is at. And for anyone that wasn't doesn't know about Season of Arrivals, Eris was transcoding all of these messages like within the roots of a tree of silver wings, which is the same kind of tree that is growing in the Root of Nightmare raid. It seems to sprout wherever light and dark touch.
And this
But
was right below the pyramid ship
yep,
above Io, where the last place that the traveler touched before it like the collapse started to happen. It just zipped off from Io
yep.
and scooted, shot as fast as it could to Earth.
Yeah, so she invited Zavala to see this. He transmatted in. I don't remember the exact conversation. It was something along the lines of like, Zavala being trepidatious of like, can we trust this? What is going on? And Eris being like, we are going to need to learn how to use this for ourselves. You can't be scared of everything anymore. And if I recall correctly, this branch is what eventually we turn into the ruinous effigy gun.
I think you're right. The one where we go through and shoot the eyes of Savathun with,
Yep.
and yep, I think you are right. So yeah, so for this to be a gift from the darkness, that makes sense that it's void now too.
It does, yeah.
Like this is making a lot more sense with this gun. Uh, yeah, okay. If that's because it is. Oh my god, it is a branch, isn't it? It's made of wood, isn't it?
Yep.
Oh my god. Okay. Yeah. 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 I think you might be right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So is this so? Okay. So let's take that at face value then. If this is a gift, like the darkness, like so now, the darkness is getting fucking. They're getting desperate.
yeah,
Like
I
they're like
mean,
pointing out. They're like, look at your protected shell, your eggshell, your light. Like if you need to abandon that, and then to come back and be like, if you don't abandon that, we're gonna come destroy you. And they're like, hey, look, a gift. Look, the darkness has gift. They're going through like the 7 signs of like psychological warfare, right? Like see that thing? Yeah, you think you're big and bad on that thing. Yeah, you're cool. Oh no, you need to abandon that. If you don't abandon that, we're gonna come get you. Hey, here's the thing. Like they're going through like all the different like
yeah.
what would you call the parenting? The 7
Yeah,
signs of
yeah,
bargaining and parenting.
yep, yeah, it's like well, I think it's the stages of grief, but it doesn't exactly apply. Um
Sure.
but yeah, there's anger, bargaining, I forget what all of them are, but um I can see some correlations. It's interesting knowing where we are in the story now to see presumably the witness be so gung ho about trying to get Guardians on board with it.
Yeah.
Because like by the time we meet the witness in game, it doesn't care
Yeah.
anymore.
It's just like you're a non-issue now. Like foop foop and you're vivisected. Like it truly doesn't care. Like it wants the veil. Once it gets the veil, it's happy. It's set. It's done. The witness just doesn't care anymore after like even while Callus is doing all this stuff to get the veil for the witness still just doesn't care.
Yeah.
Like it's still just kind of chilling there like I truly don't care. But yeah, for it to go through all these different signs of like at this point in time, of course, this is what two expansions, three expansions. So you're Beyond Light, Witch Queen, Lightfall. Yeah, so
Yeah.
three expansions before the Witness gets here, and it's going through all those different ideas of like look at that thing, abandon that thing, get rid of it, like just leave it, like, and then to like threaten us and be like, if you don't abandon that, I'm coming for you, and or the darkness is coming for you, and you are going to have a second collapse, and then to like turn around the next week and go, oh, look what the darkness has, I can give you a gift, like, yeah, no, that's yeah, that is very. I think the Witness is more afraid of us than he lets on.
I mean, maybe so, and maybe not because he's afraid that we of the like damage we can do to him as far because clearly flick his wrist, we're done. Um, so maybe it's less a fear about like, oh, they can kill me or they can take me down or whatever. Maybe it's more of a fear of like they're the only things as connected to the traveler as I am. And
Sure.
that has the potential to mess with my plans.
I think that's more what it is. Like we as light bearers, because presumably we are the only light bearers in the universe, right?
Um
I guess the Elixni are
unknown.
kind of
I think
light bearers, and maybe the things of harmony might have been light bearers.
yeah, and it's interesting because from the descriptions from like the Ecumene and
Yeah,
the Harmonites and whatnot, um, it seems like they had similar to the Elixni, they had technology that allowed
right.
them to use the light as like a power source
Like to
or a
channel it
weaponry.
the way that like the splicers do through their gauntlets and stuff.
Right.
Whereas like us, it's just a natural like we
Yeah.
just wield the light. We summon a nova bomb. We tickle fingers shit. We golden gun, like we do crazy shit with the light that like has never been seen before in all of Destiny universe.
Right. And so we don't use an external mechanism unless I mean I guess you could maybe say the ghost is our external mechanism.
But
But
we
the
still channel it. Like we're
right,
still
the ghost and us are so interchangeable at this point. Like
yeah.
they like transmat into our bodies or something
Yep.
when they disappear. Um
I live in your backpack. No, you live in my lower liver.
like because we are so connected to it, yeah, like it just our body is the weapon, is
That's
the vessel
yeah.
for it.
And so I think because of that, I think because like we don't have some type of, again, the ghost is the closest thing we have to it, some type of device to channel it. But I think because we are that connected to the light, I think it's more of along the lines of that of it's not that the Witness doesn't care about us, it's the Witness knows that there's something that we can do to prevent its ultimate goal.
Yeah.
What that ultimate goal is, we still have no freaking clue. Like I mean, we're pretty sure he achieved whatever he wanted to achieve, which was to do the little triangle and go inside the Traveler. But fuck, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out in a couple months.
Several months.
But at this point in time, trying to bribe us. Uh,
Exactly.
but
I'd take a good bribe. I mean,
I
Ruinous
mean,
Effigy might not have been the best of bribes. Like, I mean, you entice me with Trinity Ghoul. I'm full darkness all the time, man.
I mean, effigy is no graviton, but
I'll give you that.
it's
I'll give
plenty.
you
I mean,
that.
it's fun, and when it came out, it was. I mean, it still is very unique in how it
It
works.
is. It
So
is.
you know, points where they're due, I guess. Uh, but yeah, it probably would have converted a lot more people if it was a meta weapon.
I'm telling you, man. If he had just come over and been like, "Hey, here's Trinity Ghoul," and I would have been like, "Okay, full witness. Bye, Zavala. Bye, Eris. I'm joining the darkness."
Or if he just showed up and was like, "Here's conditional finality," all the PvP people would have been
Oh,
like, "Yep,
they
we're
would just
on Team
quit.
Witness."
They would all have been Team Witness. Full stop.
Oh, but so we continue with the messages. This one titled "Contrast." And this one does have a Vanguard note that Eris sends, which says, another rhetorical gambit. The enemy presents itself as part of a natural cycle. Like a stalking wolf, it simply obeys its nature. How can we hate it for that? And then her personal notes underneath say, there are jaded guardians, strangers to true loss, who claim that the traveler has ulterior motives and that the darkness is a natural force. They worship gray. For them, the line between right and wrong is fine as silk and just as easy to cut. Fools. Evil is real, even in a world of gray. It must be named and fought, because left unchecked, it will take everything. Those who excuse and deny evil's existence are its greatest allies. Those who mistake its causes for moral justification are its favorite pawns. Yet the pyramid challenges me. Would not the light destroy the darkness, just as darkness would destroy the light? Why do we call a change evil when it is natural and inevitable, like Earth's winters or sunspots? Because some changes must be resisted. If we did not prepare for winter, we would die in it. We would cease to exist. So now I find myself using the enemy's philosophy to justify my opposition to the enemy. A very neat little trap. Is winter evil? It causes evil. It leads us into evil choices through scarcity and pain. But winter is the result of natural circumstance. Even if it had a mind, it could never choose to become an endless summer. It would always hurt us simply by being itself. Does that make it evil? And if we were to build shelters and weapons out of ice, would we too become evil? Survival in winter requires wintercraft. Survival in darkness requires a new idea of good and evil, one that will not collapse into moral indifference, or we will all be dredgens in the end. And that's the end of that one.
Dude, this whole thing is just like one giant thought experiment. I mean, just I don't even know where to begin with this. Like, this whole card is just one giant thought experiment. I do like kind of like at the beginning when she talks about how like there's jaded guardians, things that like they think that the traveler has ulterior motives, that darkness is a natural force, like they worship gray, like to completely deny that there is evil in the world is to be evil's greatest ally, because then you don't see it coming when it washes over you. Like, eh, that's that. Oh, Eris could write me poetry all night, and I would just sit and listen. Um, and then she talks about how like the pyramid challenges her, right? Like, um, if can the light just destroy the darkness, just like darkness would destroy the light? Like, why call something evil when it's just natural and inevitable? And I like her analogy here is a little too like point on. Like,
Yeah.
is winter evil? Like, again, we've studied stasis more and more and more now, and know that it's not cold. It is the removal of entropy from an item, right? Like it's it's dealing with time, not necessarily with temperature. Um, but then to talk about how winter is winter evil, like it causes evil, like it causes death, it causes pain. Like if you're not, uh, if you're not ready to battle it, if you have to battle winter with survival in winter requires wintercraft. I was curious if she was going to say survival in darkness requires dark craft. Like,
I mean, that's kind of the application though,
right,
or
like
the
that's like the
implication.
thing, yeah.
Uh,
Um, and then her idea of like, if we build shelters and weapons out of ice, are we evil now because we're using ice, because we're using evil things? And it's like, no, like again, going back to that idea of like all the colors exist between absolute white and absolute dark. There's not, it's not just a giant gray area. Like, maybe there's a little bit of light, maybe there's a little bit of dark, maybe there's a little bit, a little here, a little there. And to not completely give into it, and not to go completely, you know, ignore the evil, like, oh, everything's hunky dory because evil just doesn't exist. Because then that idea of like, if if you do fully, it it's I think that last part there is where it trips me up a little bit, where it's like survival in darkness requires dark craft. Well, the only dark craft we've ever seen are the dredgens, and so like to 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 be fully of dark craft, like, yeah, you will turn into a dredgen. But then to say, instead of calling it dark craft, to say a new idea of good and evil, like like a completely new understanding of the of the morality behind good and evil, like that. Again, this whole card is one giant thought experiment, and it's like, there's so many things here that are just like, Eris, you are asking way too much of us in this one.
so I think if we recall, Eris is potentially the only person that has stasis at this point.
Sure.
Um, Perhaps hasn't used it, but knows it exists and knows that she could call on it.
Because with this being right before, um,
Beyond Light.
Beyond Light, does does the Drifter have it, and does Elsie have it?
Uh, at this point, I don't believe the Drifter does. Or if he does, I don't.
He's
I don't
keeping it close to his
recall.
chest, type thing.
Yeah, I don't recall any concrete evidence to suggest that.
Right. The first time we see him use it is like when we go find them on
Right.
Europa.
Elsie certainly knows of it. I don't know if she would have gotten it by this point or not. There's nothing
With
to.
the way her time travel shit works,
Yeah,
who knows when the fuck she learned it?
there's nothing to indicate that she has met Eris yet, though.
Sure.
So as far as Eris is concerned, she's the only one that has it. And she would know that it's of the dark. And I think what we're seeing here is, yes, a thought experiment, but also is Eris processing and coming to terms with it being okay to use stasis.
Oh, because she still doesn't even fully understand it as like the entropy thing. She's just
Right.
seeing it as ice, and so now that's where she's probably drawing the analogy of
Well,
winter.
and she may not even necessarily be associating it with just ice, but definitely with darkness. Like this is
Sure.
not a power of the light. It's a power she gained from a pyramid. It's dark. And like we were saying before, up until around this area, it was very kind of set in stone. Dark is evil, light is good.
Yep.
That's it. And I think this is Eris coming to terms with like, I don't know that that's the case. Like, I
Sure.
think that's her really starting to think about, if you replace the word winter in all of this with darkness, you know, if we did not prepare for the darkness, we would
Oh
die
my
in it.
god.
We would cease to
Yeah.
exist. I,
Is dark evil? It causes evil. It leads us into evil choices. Oh
yep.
my god. But dark is the result of natural Holy fuck.
Yeah. So I think it's her truly coming to that realization of like dark and light don't think. They don't have
Sure.
minds of their own. They are just natural forces, but that doesn't mean that those forces can't cause or facilitate evil things. But just
Dude,
because it causes evil things to happen doesn't mean the
doesn't
force
inherently make
itself
it.
is.
Yeah. Or even the user. Well,
Or
yeah,
and it
I
doesn't
don't,
mean that
I
someone can't use it with
and not
better intentions.
right. They use it and not use it and not be evil, but use it. Yeah, like what you said.
Yeah.
Use it for better intentions. Yeah, yeah,
So I think it is Eris like starting to come to terms with that conclusion. Uh and saying I think what she's saying at the end is not that we would all fall to dark and become dredgens, but that in order to by the old definitions of good and evil, anyone that touches and uses dark is an evil dredgen.
yeah. Right.
And that we need to change our definition of good and evil because using dark does not necessarily make you evil, does not necessarily make you a dredgen.
Right.
Whereas if we don't change that concept, then just every guardian would be considered a dredgen nowadays.
Yep. Yep.
Which any of them that play Gambit kind of are.
So well, and again, I'm trying to think of Prophecy came out with this season, right?
I think it was Arrivals.
It had to have been because Prophecy had some of the eyeballs in it for the for Ruinous Effigy.
I think you're correct. I'm just double checking.
So throughout Prophecy is where she starts talking about like the emissaries like a dredgen
Yeah.
and
Yes,
a
it was
guardian.
Arrivals.
That's what I thought. Like the whole thing was like a dredgen and a guardian ask a question. What is light and then dredgen answers like what is light and dark, and then like the whole thing throughout the whole prophecy thing is like the gray, the gray, like light, dark. It doesn't matter. Like they're just like you get to the end of it, and even dredgen's like light, dark. It doesn't matter. They're all just tools, sister. Like it's
Yeah.
they're but they're still discovering that through this season. Like this whole season is that discovery of like darkness isn't necessarily bad. It is just a force and we can wield it. Man, oh, I love seeing these discoveries alongside the characters.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I don't necessarily. I mean, I think we were starting as like the player base. We're starting to kind of get that idea
Sure.
that maybe there's more to it than just the black and white, but it is cool to kind of walk through the steps of the characters, discovering that in the universe at the same time.
Yep.
Alrighty, but that brings us to the next chapter and message, which is just the word yes. And Eris's Vanguard report says a lapse. Nothing meaningful emerged from our work this time, except vague affirmation. Perhaps I have misinterpreted the results. And then her personal notes say, yes, it approves of my interest. It encourages me. When darkness reaches for you, you should flinch away, but I do not. This approval excites me. Am I already in its power? Is this a declaration of its triumph? When I was a guardian, I went on a dive to gather salvage from an ancient submarine. We plunged so deep that the air itself became intoxicating. Hypnotized by our own beauty, we stared into each other's helmets, drunk on our distance from the world. But when we surfaced, agony. I feel that depth pressing on me now. My fingers and my ears ache. The enemy's excitement terrifies me. It cannot give. It cannot be made to give. The fallen call it that astonishing ability to evade being robbed. It can only take. What could this yes mean except that it has taken something from me? My course is set. I did not tell Zavala. I take this onto myself in the hope of helping others. There's a space in her writing, and then it continues. The Sumerian woman returned at last. She found an arcology garden on Titan. On the manifest, pineapple. Pineapples are real. She is a power, this guardian. But there are many as bright or brighter. It is perseverance that makes the difference. We will see if this one perseveres. I sent her to bring me pineapple seeds. Her name is Anina. She has white, innocent eyes. I will not give up my work, not until I have fried rice with pineapple and raisins, and not until I know exactly what is coming. And that's the end of that one.
So I think she. I think. No, she's definitely. There are things that she is not putting in her Vanguard reports
Oh, yes.
for for sure. She is not telling Zavala that she has touched stasis. Uh,
Yeah.
she is not telling Zavala that the darkness has acknowledged her using stasis. Uh, don't, not. I guess at this point in time in the history of Destiny, like this would have been this would have been scary as shit to read and like be like, Eris, are you okay? Like, maybe don't do that. But now looking back on it, like that's exactly what she needed to be. Like
Yeah.
she needed to be out from underneath Zavala. She's always, I think, done better for the Destiny universe when she kind of like travels her own path, and for her to travel her own path for stasis and eventually find Elsie and gain the drifter, the love of the drifter, which the two of them are a thing, full stop. Um, yeah, for her to come to this on her own terms, I think that's the better victory here for her to you know whether this yes is from the darkness saying awesome, you accepted the darkness, you've accepted using the power of the darkness, I've won, you've abandoned the light. And she's like, well, no, not really, but I'm glad you think that. um you know it's it is interesting through this thing for her to look at it as like, you know what could this yes mean except that it has taken something from me, like I think more meaning that the darkness, she's looking at this yes from the darkness of like the darkness has taken something from her. Like that's the only thing this yes could mean. Like whether it be the the darkness has taken her ideas of light and dark, of if it's taken her away from the light, whatever. But I think she sees this yes as like it's just approved of her interest. Like the darkness is saying yeah, she sees the darkness as saying yes, as like, okay, I found stasis, should I use it? And from the darkness it says yes, like just use it. But it, that yes is to be interpreted however it's
Right.
on its own as an individual word. That yes can mean whatever the hell it means, but she's taking it as I'm on the right path, my course is set.
Now, an interesting bit here. And I don't quite know how to tie these things together yet, but there are some correlations that are worth mentioning. So we learn the name of this Sumerian woman. It is Anina, Enina, or at least that is how Eris spells it. However, there is another Sumerian Anina from the Mesopotamian uh, pantheon, which is Inanni, also known as Ishtar.
Oh my god.
Uh, and the
Fuck my head. Is
story,
this just a Vex?
I don't think it's a
Is Anina a
Vex.
Vex?
I don't know if it's a Vex. I mean, white innocent eyes could mean who knows what. Um,
Radiolarian.
could, but so the thing that is interesting about the story of the Mesopotamian Enina is that, and I am in no way versed on this mythology. This is just the very brief summarized version I've been able to pull up. Um, is that she was imprisoned in the underworld, escaped with the help of others at the sacrifice of her husband, and carried wisdom of the underworld away with her when she left it. Uh, and there's a lot of similarities there to Eris herself.
Sure. Of Eris going into the darkness and taking away knowledge of the darkness. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I'm following.
she was trapped in the Hellmouth. She escaped. She survived at the sacrifice of her ghost. She escaped with the help of our guardians, albeit unwittingly at the time. And she brought back from the underworld, quote unquote, with her information about the hive that have been the only reason that we are where we are in the game. So it's almost like she's met someone that, in name at least, is inspired by a mirror of her story. Now, as to what that might mean, I don't know, but I feel like they're really, like, there's something there. There's too many coincidences there to be like, this doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah.
and the fact that, Anina also later became known as Ishtar is a pretty big thing too.
I'm just saying, is this okay, do me a favor. Look up Maya Sundaresh's team. The five members of it. There's not an Anina on that team, is there?
I do not believe so.
I don't think there is, because it's Maya and her wife, the two guys, and then there's a fifth member.
Yeah, let me pull it up here. Um, it was Maya, Chioma, a Dr. Shim, and a Dr. Dwayne McNead. Yeah, but no Anina.
No, Anina. Okay. I was curious if this was like one of the copies of one of the copies or something like that. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
But the fact that she found a pineapple, and we now know that pineapples are real.
Yeah.
It's just this idea that pineapple, like, they're pineapples, man. Just go get one.
So you know where the word or the name Anina does show up?
Where?
Tyrannicide. Back in the Awoken of the Reef book,
Oh my god.
Mara uses the story of Anina, or I suppose it may be Inanna. Apologies, I have not looked up the pronunciation. Um, but she uses the same story, the same story of descending into the underworld as the comparison for her plan to be killed and squirrel away into Oryx's throne world and then
Oh
come
my
back.
God.
So there's a number of connections to this particular mythos that have been used throughout Destiny.
That's mind blowing. Explosion just happened there.
I mean, I can't believe it's a coincidence. Again, I couldn't tell you like this is what this means, but it's just there's something there. There's got to be.
There's something there. There's something there.
But
Well, I'm looking at time here. We still got a lot of this book left. Do you want to cut this one short or?
yeah, I think we're going to be better off making this a little shorter one and then picking up on the rest of this book for the next episode.
Yeah,
So we're gonna call it here and say that is the end of the readings for tonight.
yeah. Halfway through this book of questions, like it I've always been intrigued with this book, and why the darkness has given us all these little like one word entries here, and to like try to figure out like what is the darkness actually telling us through the season of arrivals. Like obviously this was, you know, this is now going on 3 years in the past. Like this was a while ago, and so we have ton of new information to help understand what the darkness is trying to tell us here, and I think we're doing a pretty good job here so far.
Yeah,
I don't know. What do you think?
yeah, it is maybe intentionally very up for interpretation when it's
Oh,
just single
absolutely. I mean, that's
words.
that's the darkness. Like that's what the darkness wants. It
Yeah,
it I think that's what the light wants too. Like they want that idea of like figure it out for yourself, man. Like, you know, these are the we're again thinking back to the idea of the voice in the dark and the voice in the light, um that they are um that they are th- th- they're players in the game, but they don't want to mess with any of the pieces.
yeah,
Like I think that's a big thing there. So to just have like these very vague messages to like interpret it how you want, therefore they can't say that they're influencing something one way or another. I think that's a I think that's a big thing here.
yeah, maybe so. And I guess that is kind of the ultimate question. Presumably, these are coming from the pyramid ship. Presumably, they're coming from the witness. The witness has not necessarily done anything even remotely close in character to these messages.
No,
Maybe they are coming from somebody else. Maybe
I don't
it's
know, man.
not the witness.
It's I like the idea that there is like a voice in the darkness, but and again, it could just be me looking too much at it, but like having replayed through some of the intro missions and stuff, like all the characters in game, Zavala, Ikora, all the big name people are convinced that the voice in the darkness is the witness. And it's I don't know. I'm with you on this. I'm hopeful that there's more to it. I am scared that there is not.
Yeah, it's kind of where I'm at too.
That's where I'm at. Like I'm gonna hold that position until we see what's going on with Final Shape. Like I am hopeful that there's more to it, but scared that it is at face value at this point. That's just is what it is. But
Yeah.
anywho, well, do we have any shout outs?
Yeah, so no specific shout outs for this episode. But I do want to take a moment to remind anyone or announce, I guess, for anyone that didn't see it on our Twitter page, that we are now rolling out our episodes on YouTube. Uh, it currently we're doing a series per week up on YouTube, with the intention to eventually get it caught up to our current material, and then it will be on the same release schedule as all of the other platforms. But Books of Sorrow went up this week. This week being the time of recording. Uh, when this episode is released out to you all, we will be releasing our History of the Awoken. And that's going to be a little more spaced out than Books of Sorrow. Books of Sorrow was like all at once, which was just this giant chunk in anyone's sub feed. So the Awoken series is going to be more broken up. It's going to be about 2 episodes per day throughout the week. And so, but we'll have the Awoken, we'll have Braytech, we'll have all of our histories of Elixir and Cabal and such. Get the big series out there, and then do some of the smaller ones, and then a couple of the one shots in a week until we catch up to where we are now.
Yeah. Well, I guess. Shoot, I don't know who to thank.
I mean, it's all only about one person, which makes it kind of difficult.
It is hard. No, you know what? We're gonna thank and Nina and you're gonna have to look at pronunciation of that. I'm gonna just butcher the shit out of that. We're gonna thank the Guardian who is finding pineapples.
There you go.
Because I enjoy pineapples. I like fresh pineapples. I think.
I quite enjoy pineapples.
I've been to Hawaii at least once. I didn't go to Dole though. Like that was like the big thing to do down there is like go to Dole and like go to the pineapple farms and see the pineapples and frolic in the fields of pineapples, I guess. No, I do enjoy pineapple. Not the description that Eris is giving him. Not a
pine flavored apples.
A pine flavored apple. I don't know, Eris. You might be on your own on that one. Because I know what pine smells like, and I kind of know what it tastes like. I don't think I want that in my apples.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say that right now.
That doesn't work on pizza.
It does not. It did. No, sir. I will take a pineapple. I will not take a pine apple.
Yes, please.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, person I cannot pronounce because I am not Sumerian. Yeah. You got anything else, Smith?
That's it.
All righty. Well, then from all of us Lore Daddies to all of you Guardians out there, we'll see you next time.
You found your people. Guardians do love their myths and stories.